You know the scene, right? You've just wrapped up this huge brainstorm session. The whiteboard is just a sea of sticky notes. You've got 50, maybe 100 different ideas. The energy in the room is amazing. And then, crickets. Nothing happens. So today, we're going to talk about how professional product teams make those really tough decisions to get from all that chaos to a solid, actionable plan. Here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the big trap that gets most teams stuck. Then, we'll get into the core mindset shift you absolutely have to make before diving into a really practical toolkit of frameworks. After that, we'll look at the human biases that always get in the way. Then we'll see how to reframe your ideas as actual experiments, and we'll end on what I think is the single most important lesson for your entire career. All right, let's get right into it. The first thing we need to understand is why even the most creative, the most brilliant teams can get totally paralyzed. And this, right here, is the absolute heart of the problem. A whiteboard covered in ideas feels super productive. But honestly, without a clear way to choose, it's just creative theater. Teams are amazing at coming up with possibilities, but they are terrified of actually making a choice and picking a direction. And that, my friends, leads to total stagnation. Let's just call this what it is. Idea constipation, right? Everyone is creatively blocked up. You've got all this fantastic input, tons of ideas, but zero output. The team is fantastic at generating options, but just fears making the tough choices that lead to real progress. And so the product just sits there. So how do we break this deadlock? Well, it all starts with a really fundamental shift in how you think about your work. It's what people often call the senior designer mindset. This slide really nails the key difference. See, a junior designer often treats their ideas like these precious little children that need to be protected. They get defensive, they get protective, but a senior designer, they treat ideas like disposable tools. You have to get comfortable killing your own idea if it means finding a better way to solve the problem. It's all about separating your ego from your output. And this mindset, it's built on mastering two totally separate modes of thinking. First, you have divergence. This is your yes and phase. Go for volume, no judgment allowed. The whole goal is just to create as many options as you can. Then you have convergence. This is the no but phase. This is where you apply criteria and you make the hard choices. The single biggest mistake teams make is trying to do both of these at the same time. You've got to be really strict about keeping them separate. Okay, now for the really practical stuff. How do you actually converge? Let's get into the toolkit that real teams use day in and day out to make these decisions effectively. We're going to look at 3 frameworks, and you should think of them as a sequence. Dot voting is like your wide-angle lens, just to gauge the energy in the room. The impact versus effort matrix, that's your zoom lens for finding the quick wins. And assumption mapping, oh, that's the sniper rifle for taking out risky ideas before they cost you a single dollar. Okay, let's be real about dot voting for a second. It's flawed. A lot of the time, it's just a popularity contest. So please don't use it to make a final decision. Think of it as a quick sanity check, a way to gauge the team's energy. If an idea gets 0 votes, yeah, it's probably dead. If it gets all the votes, well, that's a strong signal that you should probably investigate it further. Now, here are some pro tips, some cheat codes, really, to make dot voting more strategic. First, give the product manager more votes. Why? Because they're the one who's ultimately accountable for the business outcome. Use colored dots, maybe red for customer pain points, blue for business goals. And my absolute favorite tip, read the problem statement out loud right before you vote. It is amazing how this simple little act refocuses the entire team on what actually matters. Next up, the impact versus effort matrix. This is your workhorse. This is the tool you'll use for prioritizing more than any other. It helps you visually separate the high-value, easy work from the low-value, really hard stuff. So this matrix sorts all your ideas into 4 buckets. High-impact, low-effort ideas, those are your quick wins. Do these right now to build momentum. Low impact, high effort. Those are the money pits. You kill these immediately. High impact, high effort ideas are your major bets that are going to need more research. Now the key here, and I can't stress this enough, is to always have an engineer in the room to give you an honest score on the effort. And now for the most powerful tool in the entire kit, assumption mapping. This framework completely shifts the conversation from, hey, do we like this idea? To, what is the single riskiest part of this idea? You're no longer just debating opinions. You are systematically mapping out risks. So let's use an example. Let's say your idea is an AI playlist that automatically adds songs when your heart rate spikes during a workout. Cool idea. But What has to be true for this to actually succeed? Well, for starters, users have to own wearables. Then they have to be okay sharing sensitive health data with you. And critically, your music licensing deals have to allow for this kind of thing. When you map all these out, you realize pretty quickly that the riskiest assumption by far is the legal one. If the licensing says no, the entire feature is dead on arrival. So before you design a single screen, before you write one line of code, you test that one assumption. That is how you kill bad ideas before they even exist. So you have the tools, but making decisions, these still hard. Why? Well, it's because our own brains get in the way. You have to learn to become a bias detective. And the most common bias you will ever face is the sunk cost fallacy. You've heard it a million times. We've already invested so much time in this, we can't stop now. Yes, you can. That past effort is gone. Spending more time and money on a bad idea will not bring it back. A senior designer's job is to be the one brave enough to say, stop. And then there's the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion. You know, when a VP wanders by and says, I really like red buttons. And suddenly, everyone in the room loves red buttons. Your job here isn't to argue. Your job is to protect the process. You say, that's a great thought. Let's put that on the impact/effort matrix and see how it stacks up against our other priorities. You're not being difficult. You're just redirecting opinion back to an objective framework. So, after all this filtering, all this debate, what happens to the one or two ideas that actually survive? You don't just throw them over the wall to developers. No, you turn them into something that you can test. This is where you shift from being a designer to being a product scientist. You frame the idea as a clear hypothesis. For example, we believe that adding a progress bar will result in increased user retention. We will know we are right if retention goes up by 5%. This little template, it's like magic. It completely removes your ego from the equation. If the test fails, you didn't fail. The hypothesis was proven wrong. And that's not failure, that's just learning. And all of this brings us to the final and honestly, the most important mindset shift you need to make for a long and successful career in product. So let's just quickly recap the key lessons here. First, be ruthless about separating your divergent thinking from your convergent thinking. Use frameworks like impact versus effort to prioritize the smart way. Find your single, riskiest assumption and test that thing first. Always be on the lookout for biases, especially sunk cost. And finally, frame all of your work as a testable hypothesis. And this is the ultimate lesson. If you fall in love with your solution, your specific design, your clever feature, you will go down with the ship when it inevitably fails. But if you fall in love with the problem, you will happily throw away any solution, even your own, to find a better one. And that is how you build products that truly matter.